I let my mother humiliate me at my own wedding because I needed witnesses. 200 people were standing under warm amber lights inside a glass conservatory in Asheville, watching what they thought was the happiest day of my life. My name is Brooke Pierce. I am 31 years old. I build systems for a living. I solve problems before they happen. I see patterns most people miss. And for most of my life, my family has treated that like a flaw. I stood there in a silk gown I paid for myself, holding a champagne glass that suddenly felt too cold in my hand, as my mother stepped up to the microphone with that smile. The one that always comes right before she says something cruel and calls it humor. She adjusted the mic, looked around the room, paused just long enough to pull everyone in. Then she said, "Try not to mess this one up, Brooke." The room exploded. Not everyone laughed, but enough for it to echo. Enough for it to land exactly the way she intended. I did not flinch. I did not blink. I smiled, because here is the part most people in that room did not know. This was not new. This was not accidental. This was not a joke that went too far. This was a pattern, a system, a performance my family had perfected over decades, and I had spent just as long learning how to survive it. From the outside, we look polished, successful, the kind of family people compliment at weddings. My father, calm and respected. My older sister, Madeline, effortlessly admired. And me, the difficult one, the intense one, the one who needs management. Let that sink in. I learned early that if I reacted, I lost. If I defended myself, I became the problem, so I adapted. I smiled half a second late. I kept my voice even. I made discomfort look like composure. That skill got me through boardrooms. It got me promotions. And tonight, it got me exactly what I needed. Because while my mother stood there enjoying her moment, and my father chuckled into his champagne like she had just said something clever, and my sister watched the room with that satisfied, knowing look, they had no idea. Not about the recordings, not about the messages, not about the fact that for the first time in my life, I was not standing there to endure them. I was standing there to end it. Even my husband shifted slightly beside me. Just enough for his shoulder to touch mine, grounding. "Steady, Reel," he leaned in and murmured, low enough that no one else could hear. "You do not owe them anything." For a second, my grip on the glass tightened, then I exhaled, smiled wider, and raised it slightly toward the room like nothing had happened, because timing matters, and I was not about to waste mine. I used to think I was the problem. That is how it starts. Quickly, gradually, almost politely, not with shouting, not with violence, but with small corrections, small jokes, small looks that linger just a second too long. Do you have to be so intense? Why do you always make things complicated? Relax, Brooke. Not everything needs to be perfect. It sounds harmless. It sounds reasonable. Until it becomes the only version of you anyone is allowed to see. I learned that early, at family dinners. I was the one who noticed when the reservation was wrong, when the bill had errors, when someone was being talked over. I spoke up calmly, clearly, and every time my mother would tilt her head just slightly and smile. There she goes again. My father would chuckle. My sister would roll her eyes. And just like that, I was no longer the person who fixed the problem. I was the problem. Let that sink in. By the time I was in my 20s, the script was already written. Madeline was the easy one, the glowing one, the one people described with words like effortless and charming. I was the one they described with warnings, driven, demanding, difficult. The kind of compliments that never feel like compliments, the kind that follow you into every room. I adapted the only way I knew how. I got better at reading people, better at anticipating outcomes, better at solving things before they broke. In college, that made me valuable. At work, it made me successful. But at home, it made me a target, because competence in the wrong environment does not earn respect. It invites control. The first time I realized something was deeply wrong, I was 26. Madeline had just gotten engaged. The house was full of people. Laughter, champagne, that same warm lighting that makes everything look softer than it is. I was in the kitchen, quietly fixing a catering mistake no one else had noticed. The wrong dietary labels, a small thing. the kind of thing that becomes a big problem if ignored. I was halfway through reorganizing the trays when I heard voices from the hallway. Not loud, not meant for me. Madeline was speaking first. I just do not get how she functions like that all the time. It is exhausting. My mother laughed softly. She needs it. That is how she feels in control. There was a pause, the kind that feels heavier than the words. Then my father added, almost casually, at least it makes her useful. Useful, not respected, not appreciated, useful. I remember standing there with a serving tray in my hands, staring at the labels I had just corrected, feeling something inside me shift in a way I could not name at the time. It was not anger. Not yet. It was clarity. Cold, quiet, precise. From that moment on, I started paying attention differently, not as a daughter trying to belong, but as an observer. I noticed how every joke followed a pattern, how every compliment came with a qualifier, how every success I had was reframed as luck or intensity or something that needed to be softened before it made other people uncomfortable. And I noticed something else. They never did it when they needed me. When my father had a contract issue, suddenly I was sharp. When my mother needed help organizing an event, suddenly I was so reliable. When Madeline forgot something important, I was the one she called. But the moment the room was safe again, the narrative snapped back into place. Difficult. Too much. Needs management. Do you see it? That is not confusion. That is design. By the time my wedding approached, I was not guessing anymore. I knew exactly who they were. I just had not decided what to do about it. The recording started almost by accident, a misplaced phone, a conversation that carried further than they expected, a message thread I was never meant to see. At first, I told myself it was not intentional, that I was reading too much into it, that maybe, just maybe, if I tried harder, softened more, adjusted slightly, things would change. They did not. They became clearer, sharper, more deliberate, so I stopped trying to fix it, and I started collecting it. Voice memos, screenshots, WOMs forwarded at the wrong time, not for revenge, not yet, for truth, because deep down I needed to know I was not imagining it. That night at the wedding, when I stepped into that narrow corridor near the service terrace, I was not escaping. I was confirming. And when I heard them laugh, not polite laughter, not social laughter, the kind of laughter people use when they feel safe being cruel, I did not move. Madeline spoke first. I am serious. He is too good for her. Another voice asked, then why is he with her? And my mother answered without hesitation, because he likes fixing things, and Brooke has always needed management. My father laughed, that same low, familiar laugh. At least now it is his full-time job. Something inside my chest tightened, not sharp, not explosive, just final, because there it was, not a misunderstanding, not a miscommunication, a belief, a shared, consistent, unfiltered belief about who I was and what I was worth. I could have walked out then. I could have confronted them, made a scene, given them exactly what they had always framed me as difficult. Emotional, too much, but I did not. Because for the first time in my life, AP was not interested in defending myself. I was interested in ending the pattern. I did not confront them. That is the part most people get wrong when they imagine revenge. They picture shouting, explosions, a dramatic moment where everything spills out at once. But that kind of reaction gives people like my family exactly what they want. Proof. Proof that you are unstable. Proof that you are emotional. Proof that everything they have said about you is true. I was not going to give them that, so I went back inside, smiling, calm, controlled. Exactly the version of me they thought they understood. The band was playing something upbeat. Guests were laughing. Glasses were clinking. The entire room had already moved on from what my mother said, the way rooms always do when the cruelty is disguised as humor. Even found me almost immediately. He did not ask what happened. He looked at my face once. That was enough. They crossed a line, did they not? He said quietly. I held his gaze for a second. Then I nodded. Yes, I said. But this time, I am not letting it go. There was no hesitation in him. Good. That was it. No questions, no doubt, no attempt to soften what I was feeling. Just alignment. Do you know how rare that is? To have someone stand next to you and not try to reinterpret your reality. That moment mattered more than anything that happened on that dance floor, because for the first time, I was not alone in what I saw. And once you are not alone, everything becomes easier to execute. I stepped away under the excuse of checking with the coordinator. The wedding planner was near the back, reviewing timing cues with the AV team screens, projectors' audio feeds, all of it already in place, all of it already tested. I had chosen that venue for a reason. At the time, I told everyone it was because of the light, the architecture, the way the glass reflected the evening sky. That was not the real reason. The real reason was control. A space where every visual and every sound could be directed. Where timing could be precise, where attention could be held, I approached the AV technician with a polite smile. "Hi," I said. "We are still on schedule for the bride speech, right?" He nodded. "About 15 minutes. Perfect. 15 minutes was more than enough. I stepped aside, pulled out my phone, and opened the folder I had created weeks earlier. It was labeled simply, "Archived." Inside it was everything, voice memos recorded unintentionally. Conversations captured when they thought no one was listening. Most forwarded between family members that revealed far more than they intended. At first, collecting it felt wrong, like I was betraying something. But then I realized something important. You cannot betray people who are already betraying you. You can only stop pretending it is not happening. The first file I selected was from 3 weeks before the wedding, my mother's voice clear, calm, calculated. "I just hope she does not embarrass us. You know how she gets." I paused, not because I was unsure, but because I understood the weight of what I was about to do. This was not a reaction. This was a decision, a permanent one. Once this line is crossed, there is no going back to pretending things are normal. No more family dinners, no more polite conversations, no more carefully managed interactions, just truth, unfiltered, public, final. I exhaled slowly. Then I sent the file. The AV technician's tablet lit up a second later. "Got it," he said. "We will cue it after your signal." I nodded. "Not after," I said calmly. During, he blinked, slightly confused. I held his gaze. "You will know the moment." There was something in my tone that made him stop asking questions. Understood. I stepped away again, my phone still in my hand, my pulse steady, not fast, not panicked, just aligned. Across the room, my mother was laughing with a group of relatives. My father stood beside her, relaxed, confident, completely unaware. Madeline was near the bar, leaning in toward someone, no doubt telling a story where she came out glowing and I came out difficult. Everything exactly as it had always been, except this time AP was not inside it. I was watching it, and that changes everything. Evan returned to my side just as the music shifted. Slower now, more deliberate. "Are you ready?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked, at the way he stood, grounded, certain, present. Not trying to control the situation, not trying to fix it. Just there, yes, I said then. After a pause, I added, "They think this is a joke." Evan's expression did not change. "Then let them hear the punchline." I almost smiled, not the practiced one, not the one I had used my entire life, a different one, quieter, sharper, the kind that does not ask for approval, the kind that already knows how this ends. The MC stepped forward a moment later. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, raising his glass slightly, "if we could have your attention for just a moment, we would like to invite the bride to say a few words." There it was, the moment. Every conversation softened, every movement slowed, every eye turned. 200 people, watching, waiting. Exactly what I needed. I handed my glass to Evan. He did not say anything. He did not need to. I stepped forward, each step measured, each breath controlled, each second deliberate. And as I reached for the microphone, AB realized something that surprised even me. I was not nervous. I was not angry. I was not even hurt anymore. I was clear. And clarity is far more dangerous than emotion. I took the microphone, looked out at the room, then I smiled. "Before I say anything else, I just want to thank my mother for her speech." And that was when everything began to fall apart. I took the microphone. The room quieted almost instantly. 200 conversations collapsed into silence. Glasses paused midair, chairs shifted, attention locked. I let it sit for a second, then another, because silence, when used correctly, is power. Before I say anything else, I began, my voice steady, controlled. I just want to thank my mother for her speech. A few people chuckled, light, polite, uncertain. My mother smiled from across the room, already enjoying what she thought was going to be another moment she controlled. I tilted my head, slightly mirroring her. The same gesture she had used my entire life. Try not to mess this one up, Brooke. A ripple of laughter moved through the room again, familiar, conditioned, expected. I let it land, then I nodded slowly. That line, I continued, is actually very consistent with how my family has spoken about me for years. The laughter faded, not completely, but enough for the shift to begin. I turned slightly, glancing toward the AV booth, a small movement, almost invisible, but it was all it took. Let me show you what they call a joke. The screen behind me lit up. At first, people thought it was part of the wedding, a slideshow, photos, something sentimental. Then the audio started. My mother's voice clear, sharp, unfiltered. I just hope she does not embarrass us. You know how she gets. The room froze, not quiet. Frozen, a different kind of silence, the kind that makes people sit up without realizing they are doing it. Another voice layered in Madeline. I am serious. He is too good for her. A murmur moved through the crowd. Confusion first, then recognition, then discomfort. I did not move. I did not look at the screen. I looked at them, at my parents, at my sister, watched the exact moment their confidence cracked. The next clip played, my father this time. At least it makes her useful. Useful, the word echoed through the speakers like it had weight, like it had always had weight. Someone in the front row shifted in their seat. Another guest lowered their glass slowly, and then, the final piece, my mother again, calm, certain, cruel. She has always needed management. The audio cut, no music, no transition, just silence, heavy, unavoidable. I stepped forward slightly, still holding the microphone, still completely steady. I spent most of my life believing I was difficult. I said, no rush, no emotion bleeding through, just clarity. I thought if I worked harder, spoke softer, adjusted more, eventually I would become someone my own family could respect. I let that sit, let them feel it, then I continued. But the truth is, I glanced briefly toward the screen, then back to the room. I was never the problem, a pause measured, deliberate. I was the cover. That landed. You could feel it, like something invisible snapping into place. Across the room, my mother finally moved. Brooke. She started, sharp, controlled, trying to regain ground. I raised my hand slightly, not aggressive, not dramatic, just enough to stop her. And it worked, because for the first time, she was not the one controlling the room. I was. For anyone here who is confused, I continued, turning slightly to address the audience, let me clarify something. I took a breath, slow, even. The connections my family relies on, mine. A ripple. The clients that built our reputation, introduced by me, another shift. The financial support that kept certain appearances intact. I let the sentence hang for half a second, then finished it. Also mine. This time the reaction was immediate. Whispers, looks exchanged, the room recalibrating in real time. I turned back toward my family. My voice did not rise. It did not need to. As of tonight, I said that ends. No hesitation, no softness, no apology. Every account, every introduction, every form of support. A beat, gone. My father took a step forward. Brooke, this is not the place. It is exactly the place. I cut in, still calm, still precise, because this is where you chose to perform. That stopped him. Completely. I tilted my head slightly again. One last mirror. One more thing. I gestured lightly toward the screen. It flickered back on. But this time, no audio, just documents, e-mimes, transfers, names, dates, proof not exaggerated. Not edited, just undeniable. The kind of truth that does not need explanation. Gasps, this time, not subtle, not contained, real. I stepped back, lowered the microphone slightly. And for the first time that night, AP allowed myself a small, unfiltered smile. Not for them, for me. For years, I said quietly, you made me feel like I was too much. I looked directly at my mother, then my sister, then my father. But what I really was, a pause, final, was more than you could control. I lowered the microphone, the room stayed silent. No applause, no laughter, just the sound of something breaking that could not be put back together. Behind me, Evan stepped forward, not to speak, not to intervene, just to stand next to me. And that was enough, because this was never about destroying them. It was about ending the version of me they created, and in that moment, it was done. But what happened after that night was something none of them were prepared for. The silence did not break right away. It stretched, uncomfortable my life. No one rushed in to smooth things over. No one laughed it off. No one reframed it into something harmless, because they could not this time. I handed the microphone back without another word. No dramatic exit, no raised voice, just done. Evan's hand found mine as we stepped away from the center of the room. Warm, steady, certain. Behind us, the noise started again. But it was different now. Lauer, Frabbington, and Evan. Whispers instead of laughter. Questions instead of assumptions. I did not turn around. I did not need to see their faces to know exactly what was happening. For years, they controlled the narrative. Tonight, I replaced it. By the time we reached the edge of the conservatory, my phone was already vibrating once. Then again. I did not check it. I already knew. Apologies. Excuses, rewrites of reality. That is how people like them survive. They adapt the story. They never change the truth. Outside, the night air felt cooler than it should have. Cleaner, like stepping out of a room that had been too full for too long. Evan glanced at me. "You okay?" he asked. I considered the question, not quickly, not automatically. Really considered it, because for the first time AB did not have to pretend. "Yes," I said. And I meant it, not because it did not hurt. It did. But the pain was different now. It was not confusion. It was not self-doubt. It was clarity. And clarity does not weigh the same. Behind us, the doors opened, footsteps fast, and Evan, my mother's voice. "Brooke, wait." I stopped, slowly, turned just enough to face her. Not fully, not the way I used to, not open, not vulnerable, just present. She looked different. Not smaller, but less certain, like someone who had lost control of a script they had been performing for years. "You did not have to do that," she said, her voice tight, controlled, already trying to reshape what happened. "You embarrassed us." I held her gaze, steady, unmoved, then I shook my head slightly. "No," I said, a pause, quiet, final. I told the truth. That was the moment it landed. Not the speech, not the video. This, the absence of negotiation. Her expression shifted, not to understanding, to calculation, looking for a way back in. There was none. My father stepped forward next. "Let us talk about this privately," he said, of course, privately, where things could be rewritten, minimized, managed. I almost smiled, almost. "No," I said again, same tone, same weight. "We will not." I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, opened it 3 taps. Then I looked back at them. "I have already sent everything to my attorney," I said calmly. "And I have formally withdrawn all financial and professional support connected to this family." My sister let out a sharp breath. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "You cannot just—" "I can," I said. No anger, no force, just fact. And I did. Silence again, but this one was smaller, contained, personal, because this part was not for the room anymore. This was just for them, and for me. I took a step back, closer to Evan, further from them. "There is nothing left to discuss," I said. Then I paused, just long enough, not for them, for myself, to feel it the end of something that had defined me for too long. "If you ever wonder what changed," I added quietly, "it was not tonight." I held my mother's gaze one last time. It was the moment I realized I did not need you to understand me, to walk away from you. I turned this time fully, and I did not look back. We left before the night officially ended, before the music picked back up, before anyone tried to pretend it could still be saved. In the car, my phone finally went silent. I never opened the messages. I never returned the calls. Some doors, once closed properly, do not need to be checked again. Weeks later, I heard what happened. Reputations shifted. Relationships fractured. The kind of quiet consequences that do not need to be announced to be real. And me. For the first time in my life, AP was not managing anything. Not their emotions, not their expectations. Not their version of me, just my own life. Unfiltered, unedited, free. Sometimes people ask if I regret doing it that way. If it was too much, too public, too final, I usually just smile, not the practiced one, the real one. Then I ask them a question instead. If the people who were supposed to love you built an entire identity around breaking you, would you stay silent, or would you make sure everyone finally saw the truth?